Okay, so I am Amelia DeRink. I am the grants program coordinator here for the Institute on the Environment. I will probably run into you at one point or another. I can answer any of your questions, or if I can't answer them, I will be happy to coordinate with you to be able to get you the answers that you're looking for. I am going to drop a one second. I'm going to drop a few links in the chat here. They're going to be for the RFP, the document that you can look through to see the details. We're going to have a frequently asked questions document as well as a link to our granting website. And with that, I will pass it over to my colleague Melissa, and she can introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Kenny, and I'm the Director of Research and Knowledge Initiatives here at the Institute on the Environment. I help to support a lot of the content development for our request for proposals annually, and I'm so delighted to demystify our IonE impact goals strategy and to help you to really determine and put your best foot forward if you plan to apply for an IonE impact goal grant. We're going to spend about maybe 10 minutes or so, and I'm going to walk you through the RFP and highlight a couple of the key things that we're going to spend time focus on. And then the time is yours. This is really a session where we want to answer the questions that you have. So in the very bottom, what you'll see is you'll see a little thing that says Q&A. If you open that up, you'll be able to ask a question, and you can do that both anonymously as well as named. We're not asking people to come off of camera or onto voice today. We'll take your questions through the Q&A and answer as many as we can until we get to 12:45. So with that, let me do a quick screen share. And here we go. All right, I think you should see my screen, and on this, you'll see the request for proposals document. This is a PDF. It will not change. If it changes, you will get a detailed notification, but it will not change throughout this granting cycle. So what you're seeing here is our call for proposals. You can also go to it yourself through the link that Amelia put into chat. One of the things I want to highlight on this first page is two things. One is we have an FAQ document. The majority of questions that we get are answered in some way in the FAQ, so I encourage you to reference that if you have any questions. And if that question is not answered, to contact us. ione-grants@umn.edu is an email address that we use to and check every single business day to be able to answer your questions in a timely way related to this, as well as other granting inquiries you might have. So on the second page, what you will notice is that we have a table of contents. These are hyperlinked. So if you want to jump to any part of the RFP, page 2 is going to be the easiest way to navigate. The first section is an introduction to our granting strategy. IonE is an institute where our mission is to support a world in which people on the planet prosper together. We are under the Research Innovation Office, or RIO, and thus we serve all 5 University of Minnesota campuses. We believe deeply that sustainability is to really make progress on these kinds of sustainability challenges, and really to focus on the solutions, not just better understanding the problem, but the solutions, requires collaboration between a wide range of people, including different disciplinary groups within university settings, as well as public and private sector organizations and communities. Our impact goal granting strategy is focused on funding research across different domain areas that achieve measurable outcomes. We welcome proposals that are traditional research endeavors as well as knowledge initiatives focus on learning and development or education initiatives, as well as strategic and public interest communication. This cycle, we're going to be deploying up to $1 million. And one of the things that we do that in is really focus on those sustainability challenges where it's been particularly slow or there have been roadblocks. We focus on that in 10 different domains or investment areas. These align with our 2024 to 2029 strategic plan, and they include adaptation, mitigation, biodiversity, clean energy, water and land, food systems, planetary health, environmental justice, natural capital, and decision support. It is not uncommon that research proposals might focus on one of these areas first, and then have intersections as secondary domain areas in others. There is by no means an obligation that you focus solely on one domain area or that you have multiple domain areas. Proposals that address any of these are fully considered as part of this granting program. Another focus of this work is that because we are a public institution, we are focused on research and projects that have local to global significance and projects that really test and deploy solutions both in Minnesota as well as cases outside of Minnesota that have a meaningful and direct connection back to our home state. So if you are focused on projects that are outside of Minnesota, you will want to be quite clear in your proposal about how it connects back. Additionally, we consider the University of Minnesota as a campus laboratory, and we would welcome projects that address campus sustainability in these sustainability areas. Additionally, I think it's useful to note in the introduction that with our new strategic plan, one of the focus with the impact goals was transitioning to project level goal setting. That means that the proposal team will need to identify the barriers to progress and how those barriers to progress would be addressed in the grant proposal. So there is a specific section where that is asked, and that is one of the things that I really want to point out because if you applied a couple of years ago, this is a newer request as part of this granting strategy given our new strategic plan. In the next section, the request for proposal overview includes some of this information more explicitly, in addition to highlighting the $1 million of funding that we plan to deploy across IonE resources, impact intersections, and MinDrive environment. We note that we are both awarding medium-sized projects, which we define as 25 to less than 100K, and large projects, which we define as 100 to 200K. These projects, because they're within the University of Minnesota, encompass direct expenses, and direct expenses are not included as part of grant budgets. The call for proposals is something you're going to want to pay a lot of attention to. One of the things with the call for proposals is we have a section that provides a lot of information about how to apply in the different deadlines. So if you look at the deadlines, the first one is this webinar. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. The first deadline you need to pay attention to is the statement of intent. We're requesting that statements of intent are submitted by February 10th. It's a fairly short form and it is not obligatory, but it does really help us to make sure that we have appropriate reviewers. There's a statement of intent form linked here to make it easy for you to share that information with us. For teams that submit the statement of intent on time, I will be able to take a quick look, and if I see any flags that would constitute just like a follow-up conversation or encouraging setting up office hours, I will be going through those statement of intents that are submitted on time to just highlight that to ensure that every team is able to put their best foot forward. Proposals are due March 10th. They're due by 11:59 Central Time. There is not any extension that we will be doing past that deadline. The proposal is submitted through an application form. If you click on this link, you'll go straight to that application form, and you'll see the information. If you're like, yikes, this is a Google Doc, what in the world do I need to submit? One of the things that if you go into the FAQ and you scroll down, you will be able to see what you need to submit in both the statement of intent form as well as in the RFP submission form. So you'll see a page-by-page screenshot of that. Returning back to that March 10th deadline, the proposal has 4 parts. We're going to go through them high level. We can get into more information or details if you have them. First is a cover page. So that part 1 right here describes all of the details related to the cover page. One thing that I want to highlight here is that the team lead must be a University of Minnesota tenure track faculty member, contract faculty member, or P&A staff person in a long-term position where they're able to lead grants. If that's a question, we might need to just follow up for eligibility. Second is the proposal description. The proposal description is no more than 5 pages. It can be single space, 5 pages, including graphics. And you'll see a couple of things that we're expecting to see in that proposal. First thing you should do is start with a 1 sentence or so statement of the project level impact goal. Then the first section will be a problem statement and objective of this proposal. Next is your project plan and approach. This includes a lot of the methods that you would be deploying in order to develop that research or that plan that you're developing. The next section is products and outputs and its intended impact. And so we ask a number of questions under these sections to help guide you in your thinking so that you can be thoughtful and really thinking about how that project achieves impact outside of the university. A project that solely develops a peer-reviewed publication, unless it links to something that is a broader societal impact, is highly unlikely to be funded as part of this particular call. The third part is a project management description. It's a 1-page description. There is a section for references or citations, and then we're asking for 2-page resumes or CVs from the project leads. And then finally, for part 4, this is your budget documentation. There's no page limit, and we're uploading it separately. It should include your total requested budget in a spreadsheet format. There is a link to this template. And please note a couple of the tips for how to structure it. This template includes more than 1 tab. It includes 2 tabs, and so please read the instructions so that you fully complete the budget information. The second part of your budget documentation is a budget justification for each of the budgetary line items. There's not a specific word limit. In general, this is dependent on the number of things that you include in your budget. Please note that in-kind support is not required or expected. It will not factor into proposal decisions. And it is also helpful to note if you have particular non-university team members who might not be able to accept salary, but who have project commitments. where they will need to devote time in order to complete that, the kind of in-kind support that might be associated with it, and notes of the ability to be able to complete the work that has been described in the proposal. As you look to submit in that form, just want to also point out the proposal document should be submitted as a single PDF for parts 1 through 3, and the budget should be submitted separately as a spreadsheet and as a budget document uh, document. And so that's all going to be in the proposal application form. Things that are submitted after the deadline aren't going to be able to be accepted. The final thing in terms of deadlines that you should be aware of is these proposals will go under review. Teams that are finalists will be selected for project pitches on May 2nd, that will be conducted on May 6th and May 7th. If you are selected for that, you can get a sneak peek of what that looks like, but by no means are you that's something where we'll have a separate webinar to be able to give you some tips and tricks to be able to put your team's your best foot forward for those project pitches. There's 2 more sections to the RFP. One is a criteria for evaluation and review. We try and demystify this process, and so you've heard a lot of the things that we're looking for. They are all detailed in this criteria for evaluation and review. We want it to be a sustainability priority that's linked to one of the 10 domains. Your project has to be interdisciplinary. It also has to be community engaged. You have to have team members from outside of the university. The funds are not to simply augment or supplement existing work. It has to be a new endeavor, a new chapter of an existing project, or a significant pivot from an existing project. If you previously received IonE awards in the past, and this would be considered like a next stage grant, please contact us. We want to make sure that it would be considered a significant new chapter in an existing project, and that IonE would be a unique source of funding for that. If you continue going through these criteria, it indicates a lot of the things that you'll see in the proposal. You should clearly state the sustainability goal, that impact goal. You should clearly identify the outcomes, the change that you expect to see in the world, given the work that you're doing. Projects are going to be especially competitive if they pursue new ways of engaging historically excluded people, marginalized communities, and/or new stakeholders, or if they use project approaches that are intended to address or reduce inequities that exist in society that prevent us from fully achieving more equitable sustainability pathways. Project teams should be well equipped to be able to do the work and has a clear plan for how it will achieve that impact. Budgets and budget justifications are reasonable, and the project team has the potential to leverage this award by attracting and securing additional resources and growing the project in other ways. And then finally, we have a timeline just to synthesize some of the things that you saw earlier. Just for your own reference, we will make award selections and announce it on IonE's website by June 2nd, 2025, and the grants will be awarded so that projects can begin by July 1st, 2025. On the last page is a number of important links. So with that, let me stop here and let's turn to your questions and focus the rest of our time on the questions that you have. Okay, so I'm just going to go through the Q&A. So first question I see is the large size project designed as a 1-year or a multi-year project? This is a great question. So IonE Impact Goal grants are designed to be 2-year projects. That's both for medium scale and large scale projects. And so if you're able to accomplish the work in less than 2 years and you're able to define that, that's not taken as a positive or a negative. It's just something that's considered when we receive the grants. But that's a great question. These are intended to be 2-year grants. We do award no cost extensions for an additional year, and in very, very, very rare situations, extend it for more than 1 year. And those have been situations where it has been quite unique to that project team. So that's pretty uncommon. About there is a portion of our teams that do request no cost extensions, but the goal is that these projects are completed within a 2-year time period. All right. So let's move on to the next question. Could you provide an example on this one sentence statement of the project level impact goal at the very beginning of the proposal? Let me see if I can go to our FAQ, because we do have an example of this. All right, I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to show you this tips and tricks of like how to navigate it, because I love that we have hyperlinks. All right. How do I write a strong impact? Okay, so in the FAQ, one of the things that we talk about is that the impact goal is something that is set at the project level. It is something that both identifies the barriers to progress that will be addressed by the grant proposal and how you plan to do work that you think will overcome that barrier. So a strong impact goal statement has a clear statement of that barrier goal and the impact that would be achieved by the project. And it also includes, to the extent possible, something that allows us to measure the effectiveness. And so that could be qualitative or quantitative metrics that give a sense of the project's contribution towards that goal. So not at large, but specifically what the project is aiming to do. So for example, for a project that might be focused on new approaches to greenhouse gas emission reductions, there might be a project goal statement that looks like this. So one of the largest barriers to deep decarbonization is exploration of the technological and socio-political feasibility of carbon capture and storage technologies. This team includes these kinds of experts who will assess the viability of potential impact ranges from both bottom-up accounting to global emissions impact, and a new agricultural bioenergy carbon capture method called ABC. With team members from these non-university partnerships, the project will pilot ABC on 5 farms in greater Minnesota. If successful, we'll be able to quantitatively estimate a maximum level of carbon capture from ABC. In doing so, we can assess the feasibility of ABC as a technology that could support decarbonization policies in Minnesota and meet ambitious global greenhouse gas targets. So I realize this is more than one sentence. So think about this as a short synopsis of that impact goal statement. If you can do it in a little bit tighter text, great. This is probably about 75 words. So think about this as 50 to 100 words for that impact goal statement. Great question. Okay. The next question is, if we have non-University of Minnesota NGO or international NGOs or international institutions, can we transfer funds to them? If you are working with people who are outside of the US, that is a complicated budget question. And that's something where we encourage you to work with us individually to make sure that, given your unique situation, that we have things set up that would allow you to be able to do the work in a way that funds the people who would be supporting that. There are specific policies around funding people who do not have a US base. And so you'll want to work through a few of those details in advance to ensure that this is the right funding mechanism for your idea. Next question. What roles can postdocs at University of Minnesota play in the proposal? So postdocs can be named as senior personnel or named postdocs. In a proposal, given University of Minnesota policy, you can't formally be a PI or a co-I in a proposal. We encourage, as part of professional development, when it is mutually advantageous to provide mentorship in proposal writing processes, and postdocs can participate in proposal writing. They cannot be named as PI or co-I since these are non-long-term positions at the university. If you are in a postdoc that transitions into a faculty role, that is a very unique situation. And those situations, please contact us. It would need to be one where it would transition to a faculty role at the University of Minnesota, not at another university. We got a question related to stage 2 funding. So if you're seeking such stage 2 funding for a currently funded IonE Impact Goal grant project, is it better to get in touch and have a conversation prior to submitting a letter of intent? Prior to submitting a proposal, yes, absolutely. And also, it's kind of hard to get on my calendar. Anyone that's like a stage 1 proposal is working with Ann Depsutter. She has some set office hours for this grant cycle for the proposal writing one. I have a limited set of hours where I'm working with people who have very unique proposal situations or are requesting stage 2 funding. Please contact IonE-grants@umn.edu. We will get something set up. You don't have to have that meeting scheduled prior to the statement of intent, but we will want to get something set up well in advance of the proposal submission deadline. Would we award a grant with partial funding? Oh, so you put in a grant for 200K and we say, hey, we would award it for 125K. The short answer is it depends. We have done this in a few uncommon situations where there were very unique proposals, but we did not have resources to be able to fully award a grant as the budget was structured. But in general, what we'd like you to do is propose ideas that you would like to have fully funded. It is pretty rare that we come back to teams and say, we're not willing to fund all of this grant, we're only willing to fund part of it. I'll just pause here and just remind folks, I know we're going through these questions pretty quickly. There's more space for questions during our time together, so feel free to add those and we're going to get to as many as we can. So next question. I'm wondering about restrictions on how funds can be used, such as restrictions on equipment purchases, etc. We're interested in doing a cohort program where participants develop climate adaptation plans for their farms, and wondering if there could be a stipend for each participant to implement a piece of their plan. So equipment purchases are unique because they require maintenance plans, and oftentimes with those kinds of grants, it's unclear who owns the equipment, so we have to get things defined ahead of time. Stipends or honoraria or participant support costs are common grant budgetary line items. If someone is doing work such as developing a climate adaptation plan and implementing it, it is absolutely reasonable that you would put in the budget funding to support them and the work that they would be doing to implement that piece of the grant that is being funded. So absolutely, if you have additional specific budget questions, do let us know. I would say that, and the one other thing that was asked was restrictions on how the funds can be used. I would say two things. One with this, one is because community partners broadly defined is a requirement of this grant, we are expecting that there are resources that are being distributed in ways that are consistent with the work that is proposed. Nearly all of our grants, with some exceptions for like government employees or, Fortune 500 private sector entities, it's not uncommon to see salary lines or other kinds of honoraria included as part of those grants to pay people for the time that they're spending on the project. The restrictions that we have are restrictions that any grant award has through the university. For example, if you're throwing an event, we cannot pay for alcohol. There are special situations with equipment, so contact us ahead of time, and we can't provide funding to people in ways that are inconsistent with certain employment situations. So if you have questions related to that, please reach out and we'll be able to work with you individually. If you reach out with a week or more of time before proposals are due, it is more likely that we will be able to resolve it in a prompt way that allows you to have a correct budget. Next question. Oh, I'm sorry. The PDF was a little bit small. One of the things that we'll do is we will pop the link so you can look explicitly at the same PDF that we were showing, both for the RFP and the FAQ. These are both on IonE's website. I show you these documents, not so you can read them as we're going, but so that you know how to find things when we're not in this webinar together. So thank you for that reminder. I'll make sure it's really big next time we're doing this. Next question. Can we fund grants? Can the grant be used to fund postdoc salaries? Yes, absolutely. It can be used to fund postdocs, it can be used to fund graduate students, it can be used to fund tuition, it can be funding undergraduate students, it can be funding non-university partners, it can be funding faculty or research staff salary. Build out the project and the work, make sure that the budget aligns with that. But yes, we highly encourage funding people who would be in a training role, such as undergraduate, graduate students, and postdoctoral scholars. Next question. Is it okay if the postdoc in the project is an international employee? Yes, if they are eligible to work at the University of Minnesota, it is absolutely fine for that postdoc to be an international employee. If they are employed outside of the US and they are not a University of Minnesota based employee, that is a different situation because we're funding someone who is in a postdoc role but is not a University of Minnesota employee. In those cases, please reach out to us and we'll work with you given that individual situation. There's a question, are international travel costs covered? If you are proposing a project that is outside of Minnesota, you need to do two things. One is make sure that you connect whatever project you are doing to why it matters in Minnesota and Minnesota sustainability challenges. Second, if your project that is based outside of the US requires travel costs to be able to do the work, yep, absolutely. Reasonable travel costs are included. You'll want to build out in your budget an estimate for how those travel costs are calculated. Next question. Can the grant be used to fund a for-profit design studio? Follow up on the, I'm guessing, postdoc question. Ooh. For-profit design studio. We encourage entrepreneurial ideas that would lead to private sector innovations that could advance sustainability solutions. If you're developing projects like that, we encourage you to reach out very early and often to tech commercialization. We've also worked with tech commercialization during the grant pitch process to just make sure that it's clear when there is IP, what the disclosures are and what we need to maybe hide at particular processes because of IP concerns. For-profit design studio, I think this is one where I'd want to hear more. What I'd encourage you to do is I think this would be a proposal that would not be considered a stage one. One of the things that we have set up is office hours. So Ann Depsetter with the Regional Sustainable Development Partnership and one of IonE's team members for the IonE Impact Goal grants. She's been doing office hours with teams where they have ideas that they want to move forward into grant proposals. This could even be something you want to do not this year, but next year. And you want to get things set up early so that you're going to be very competitive for future calls. What I'd encourage you to do is, given that particular question, reach out to Ann Depsetter and set up some office hours. Amelia, in the next minute or so, will just put a little bit of information. Oh, you already did. Thank you. Related to office hours. So that's a suggestion I have, and then we'll touch base in more detail if there's other things that come up related to that specific idea. I'm intrigued. I'm kind of wanting to know a little bit more. Next question we have, does the budget need to include 55% overhead costs of the University of Minnesota? Overhead was just updated, so it's 54% now, but the short answer is because this is an internal award, no ICR is included in the budget. ICR is indirect cost recovery, and that's what's referred to with this overhead cost question. So the budget only includes direct costs, applicable fringes, and other things needed to complete the work. The indirect costs that are embedded in every single project that we do at the university are ones where they're not included as part of this particular award. Next question, how specific do impacts on Minnesota climate need to be? Well, and it's not climate. Remember, it's sustainability broadly, so it doesn't necessarily have to be climate. For projects based on a climate issue that is out of state. So you have to relate it back to Minnesota. It doesn't have to be linked to the project can be focused on things outside of Minnesota, but you have to have a direct connection back to why it matters in Minnesota. Here's an example where it's not something that we can fund. So if you were doing a project on sea level rise and the impact of sea level rise on coastal communities along the east coast of the US, if your project is focused on sea level rise and how that links to climate resiliency, that's not something that has a direct connection back to Minnesota. Incredibly important, hugely impactful to those communities. And if you're interested in proposals like that, I can connect you with some really great offices in NOAA that fund exactly that kind of work. But if you're working on something like, I don't know, extreme heat, and you're working on that in, I don't know, say rural Idaho and working in communities there, and you think that some of the ideas that you're going to gain related to energy efficiency, like community cooling stations or other adaptation practices, as well as some of the unique factors in working in rural communities has an applicability to Minnesota because of certain places experiencing higher heat days and not necessarily having air conditioning, then yes, I think you can draw a connection in terms, but it really means you have to be quite explicit in how the work that you're doing in that space, like in rural Idaho, connects to the same kinds of issues that we face in Minnesota, and how what you learned there might have a connection back to the state of Minnesota. If you have questions on this, again, I encourage you to connect with Anne and to set up time in the office hours so that you can share a little bit about your specific research idea and get ideas on how to specifically connect it back to Minnesota, or whether it might be an idea that is better funded by a different funding source.
And it is 12:43. So we want to make sure that we respect everyone's time. So do you want to do a last minute question or
Well, maybe I could just provide some, just final advice. One is, this is a pretty unique call. And for some folks that I see on the call, it's so good to see you all. This is a call that you've applied to, that you have a strong understanding of, and some of you, this is going to be something that you're exploring. When we say that we are focused on societal impact, that means your outcomes have to be more than peer review papers. We expect team members to be outside of the university in addition to inside of the university. And when we say interdisciplinary, we're in general expecting people from different departments and colleges, people who are thinking about the problem in really different ways. And so if you have any questions related to that, again, please sign up for office hours. Please reach out to us at ione-grants@umn.edu. And also check out some of the information in the FAQ. We seek to answer a lot of the questions that have come up over the years to be able to demystify this process, because we want you to be as competitive as possible in applying to make our decision really hard. And that's why we tell you the criteria that we use to make decisions. We don't have other criteria. What you see there is the criteria that we use to make our choices at every step of the process. So with that, we are so delighted that you are interested in putting in a proposal. I'm incredibly excited to read your ideas, and the time that you spend on this is something that we're really grateful for. We do read every single proposal. It gets multiple sets of eyes, and you will get reviewer comments back whether or not it moves to the next stage or doesn't continue in the process. So good luck. We're excited to hear your ideas, and please remember to submit that statement of intent by February 10th. It will take about 5 to 10 minutes to share your information, but that helps us tremendously with setting up reviewers. Wonderful. Have a great day, everyone. It's so good to see you. Thank you.